in Colossians, he says, in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, like the spiritual realm, sometimes invisible. Matthew 18 talks about, see that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I'll tell you that there's angels in heaven. They always see the face of my Father in heaven. Like, they're angels, like there's personal angels. Psalm 91, like I mentioned, like there's all this, it's all in the Bible. It's all things that, you know, we might kind of skip over or not take as like literally, but I do feel like there's so much going on, Michelle, and like you and I, we trust that our microwave, heats up our food.
That's right.
And we
do.
trust that, like, yeah, my AirPods are connected to listen to you right now, but we can't see what's happening.
Right.
We believe it. Like,
right.
of course Bluetooth is real. Of course Wi-Fi happens.
Right.
So
but
why
the
spirit
would angels
realm,
or demons? Yeah. Why would that be so far-fetched?
It would be a huge benefit for any believer as part of our walk is to see beyond just the natural, you know.
Gosh, 5 children. And one of them is a little girl who is 5 years old now. And she has a special gift, we'll call it.
She does, yeah.
What is that gift?
No human being can fathom what God has prepared for those who love him. Seen, heard, imagined.
Wow. I'm just blown away by the number of people who have liked, followed, or even subscribed to Seen, Heard, Imagined. I wanted to take this opportunity to be very clear. Seen, Heard, Imagined is a space where spiritual seekers of all kinds are welcome. While inspired by my Christian faith and scriptures like 1 Corinthians 2:9, this brand isn't confined to one religion. It's for anyone longing to feel spiritually connected, emotionally grounded, and deeply known. Whether you call it God, Spirit, the divine, or you're still searching, this space honors your journey. I'm looking forward to providing you with positive and affirming content and products that connect you with our Creator. Welcome to Seen, Heard, Imagined. I'm your host, Michelle Francine, and today we are going to address the question, do we have the ability to see into the spiritual realm? And to help me address this question today, I have Brandon Marx. Sir, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, let me just share a little bit about you. At the age of 15, Brandon, you discovered the power of video when a volunteer tribute that you created brought tears to the eyes of everybody in the room who witnessed it. And that launched a lifelong passion for storytelling. After studying film in Los Angeles, you spent 14 years at Gateway Church, eventually becoming director of video, where you led a team of 30 plus people, which shaped some powerful worship experiences every single week. And today you coach church tech teams through Directing Academy, co-authored the book Stewarding the Atmosphere, and you are the lead producer at Commotion Engine, creating animated content for brands like Zoom, TED, JCPenney, Amazon, and Lockheed Martin. And you are very passionate about helping creatives steward their calling with purpose and with excellence. So welcome to the show. And I want to tell the viewers that I met you recently, just recently, during a voiceover audition checkup webinar. And this is managed by Liz Atherton of castvoices.com. So I had the audition for you for specifically an explainer video. And I didn't make the cut. And that's okay. But what was great is that you really, really broke down the areas in which I need to make some improvements for voiceover reads, such as explainer videos. And so I've been a witness to your desire to mentor and help creatives. So welcome to the show.
You know, what's funny about that, Michelle, is it's hard for me because I care so much about people. Whenever I'm doing a real audition, it's really easy to just click yes, no, swipe left, swipe right, you know.
Yeah.
But when it was this audition, it's like, I want to tell you why. Like, I want to tell everybody. But I always say, like, making the short list, which you did, is a high compliment because it's all about just those little those little vocal nuances. But that was really hard for me because I'm like, I want everyone to win this thing. But
I appreciate
it doesn't
that.
work as easily. Yeah, you did great.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough. It is tough being a casting director. I've had a little taste of that myself
Yeah.
with a recent project. It's tough to siphon through all of that and all the
It's tough,
talent.
but hey, we can still be friends, and you invited me back, so at least we got that.
That's right. So tell me a bit about you. What does it mean to be a spirit-filled follower of Christ?
Man, it's a word and a term that just gets thrown around, I feel like, in Christian realms. But to me, I'm trying to make it to where my life is completely led by the Spirit. I don't feel like I need to rely on the Spirit for, to decide which underwear to wear or what, how to pick out an outfit. But when it comes to like life choices and things, like I don't want to bring the Lord with me. I want to go where he's going. I want to go where the Spirit is leading. And so to me, that's a big part of every decision that I've been making recently. This is kind of a newer thing for me. I feel like I've always been Spirit filled, but as far as like leading my life, I had recently switched careers, like you mentioned, after being at Gateway for 14 years, going into a completely different career path with a family, having to change my mindset from what I used to pray is like, Lord, would you go with me, show me what to do? Instead, I want to go where you are, because I feel like it's like, in the Old Testament with the pillar of fire and, the windstorm, like if it's gone, I have to go. I don't want to go unless you're there. And so how much more humbling is it to just say, Lord, take me with you, instead of like, oh, come with me, God. Like God's not on a leash. I'm not going to pull him with me. So that, to me, like, that's the biggest thing. And with our family, we have like a saying, and we try to have a kingdom culture. And so for us, it's like we try to model like Spirit-led behavior with the kids as much as possible, which is really hard. I mean, we have 5 kids. And so it's very, very loud all the time. Yeah. There's always something going on, someone needing to be wiped or someone, having a meltdown. But through that, I don't want them to be raised, praying for a meal and going to church. I want them to like being modeled by what we're trying to do. And that's like to seek the Lord with everything and to have him lead us. And that's hard to do outwardly, because a lot of those things are, I'm praying, in my quiet time before they're awake. Or I even use the example of like when I tithe, it's online, it's on my phone. So to them, I could be scrolling Instagram or tithing or sending an email to a big client. Like they don't know the difference. It's all dad's disconnected. So I'm trying to figure out ways, to bring all the spiritual things that we do to the whole family. And that's not easy, but we try to have our family, prayer time. We try to make sure that when we make decisions, like we're real with the kids. I grew up in a house where nothing bad ever happened, or so I thought. Obviously, knowing now what I know about parenting, like there's a lot of decisions, there's a lot of junk that happens.
A lot that happens
but
behind
like
the scenes, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. And, my parents were very good about, like, they wouldn't argue in front of us, but, like, there was never a challenge. And I think that was really hard for me when I was challenged later in life. And so for me, like, bringing the kids into the challenges, not every little thing, right? We're not going to start having a discussion with my wife in front of all the kids, but like to be able to help them understand what we're going through and how we're handling it, I think is part of that kingdom culture that we're going for.
Gosh, 5 children. 5 children. And one of them is a little girl who is 5 years old now. And she has a special gift, we'll call it.
She does, yeah.
What is that gift?
So my 5-year-old, her name is Gemma, and she is able to see in the Spirit, which is something that I don't have, that I know of the ability to do, and none of my other family members do. But this is something that's really special and unique, and it's been something, she's always been really creative and kind of has like a knack for doing things a little bit more just differently than some of the other kids. And we realized in the beginning of this year that that's probably why.
What's an example of something that she does differently than other kids?
Yeah, so we would notice some things, like she would just kind of be not staring off into space, like no brain activity, but kind of like looking at observing things. And we're just like, what are you looking at? What are you really noticing? And just not really understanding. But, 4 or 5 year olds, like, they do some silly things sometimes. So
Sure. Yeah.
this past New Year's, we had a pretty significant event, I will call it, with Gemma. And that is what helped us to realize that she has the ability to see in the spirit realm, which is totally mind-blowing, but it's really cool. So this New Year's, it was a couple days before New Year's, and she suddenly started to have what we thought were nightmares. She would run into our room after she's been sleeping in her own room for 3 years, run into our room, like screaming, like not just like, oh, I had a bad dream, mommy, but it was like, I'm perturbed and disturbed to the
Terrified.
nth degree, terrified. And, one time weird happens, and then it happened again and again for a couple nights in a row. And she just kept describing what I thought she was dreaming about, but turns out what she was seeing is like kind of like a cyclops and something very scary for her.
Yeah.
And so, as Christian parents who are just trying, like it's 2 or 3 in the morning, we're like, okay, we'll pray for you, go back to bed, like we do with the other kids, like
Right.
it happens. And but nothing is working, and she is like more and more terrified. She's under the covers in between us, like covering up all the blankets and crying and screaming. We turn lights on, nothing seems to help. And then one day, this is like after 3 days of this, my wife just had the idea to just start worshiping. Like, we'd prayed about it, we've rebuked bad dreams, evil spirits, things like that, but this time she's like, let's just worship. And so it's 3 a.m, and like with our morning breath and scraggly voices, we're there, like just like whatever worship song comes first to our head, and just saying that. And then, my daughter's just clenching and shaking and kind of just slowly stops, like gets still. And then like, one eye pops open and she's like feeling better. And then she kind of like cracked a little bit of a smile, and we're like, well, this is really interesting. So we just kept singing. And then she said, Mom, and then she like points up into like the empty, the room. And she said, the Cyclops is getting smaller, and the other ones are pouring water on it. And we were just like, water, what's happening? Like, this is 3 a.m. I feel like I'm tripping on something, and so we're just like listening to her describe what's happening. She's like, yeah, there's the Cyclops, but she's not afraid anymore because she's been freaked out every single day. And so it doesn't matter, like, her covered up or not, like, she's still seeing all this Cyclops. And then there's these other lights. She described them as lights, like pouring water on the Cyclops, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then listening to her story, we like stopped singing. So we're like, oh, that's crazy. What's going on?
Yeah.
But she's like, no, you got to keep worshiping. And because like when we stopped, like then it got more powerful. So we kept worshiping, and this Cyclops, however she described it, got smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually it was gone. And there was a very noticeable relief that she had. And we were relieved because we're like, wow, what just happened? Like we didn't notice anything. We didn't really sense much other than the amazing relief that happened once it was over. And so these other lights, and what now we know that she's seeing are angels, were dumping water, and because of the worship. So like the worship was like the fuel that did that. And it was just when our eyes were opened to like what we realized what was actually happening. And so we had just read this book. I don't know if you've read it before, Michelle. It's called The Veil by Blake Healy. This is one of the most incredible books I've ever read. He is one of the leaders of Bethel's School of Supernatural Ministry.
Okay.
But he grew up always having been able to see in the spirit. And so we've read this. He describes it in great detail, and it's exactly what our daughter was seeing. So if we hadn't read that, I'd probably be a little concerned or freaked out, like what is actually happening.
Yeah.
But reading that, it actually excited us, Michelle, because we're like, man, she's seeing in the spirit. We knew exactly what that was because we had read that, and we were actually excited about it because that's, I mean, I think everyone can, but some people are gifted with the ability to really, I think, see more than others. And I was really excited that she was able to see those things, and because it just opens up a whole new world of what's out there.
Yeah, Gemma could be writing a book someday soon as well, sharing
I
her
think so.
experiences and what she's seeing on the other side. And that is really exciting. I'm definitely going to pick up that book. Like that is
Yes.
absolutely up my
It's a good
alley.
book.
And the pouring of water, Christian dream interpretators out there that have been really popular. I think the most popular ones have passed. I'm forgetting the name of one of them right now. Jean Paul, somebody.
John Paul Jackson.
Thank you.
Yes, he's good.
He's very good. But water is symbolic of just cleansing. It's usually involving the Holy Spirit. It's usually just very obvious things, a cleansing of something, usually of something evil, dark, a sin, or what have you. So it's so fascinating that that's exactly what she saw, was a pitcher of water being poured over this Cyclops. That's the way to squelch him,
It was, and it was, it was one of those things that as a father and my wife and I being, spiritual leaders of the house, were like, I was shocked that there would be even the demonic presence. And so that had me concerned as to like, what else is there that we need to take more seriously? And because I don't have that same ability to see that, it's one of those things I have to, by faith, be working on, kind of constantly, to make sure that we have, we typically cleanse our house, anoint it with oil, things like that. But like, even so, there was something there. But the coolest thing to me about it was very simple to just worship. And the angels she described were not bigger than this demonic spirit, but they were more powerful. And like you said, the cleansing, the water, it disappeared. And we just, of course, the next week, so many questions for her, because, as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, maybe you've experienced this all your life and you wouldn't know it's different, right? Like if you grow up never having a leg, you wouldn't know. I mean, you'd know because you'd see difference with people, but you'd be used to it.
Yeah.
And so she would just be like, oh yeah, I see this stuff all the time. Like, what? Like, tell us more, and so coming out of a 5-year-old's mouth, it's not as eloquent as it would be as if it were, you or me trying to describe these things. But
Right.
she talks about how she's always seeing these colorful lights and representing the angels and like all over the place. And sometimes I'll just, like I said, we'll go into her room, and some things I noticed, like, why are you doing these things? Like, she's like kind of moving her fingers and smiling. And, I thought maybe she's just imagining something, but then she told me, she's like, oh no, I'm doing that because like the angels, like the lights, they like to go in between my fingers and they're like tickling my hands. And then she's like, one time it went onto my belly button, haha. It's like, just like these cute little things that only, she's like having a really amazing time. And I love that she's surrounded by these, and I'm sure that other people are too, right? But I don't see them. And so then of course the other kids are like, so do you see any angels around me? Or and then the older boys are like, oh, I don't want to like go into my room, can you check if there's like a Cyclops?
We gotta
it became a thing.
We gotta put Gemma like right there at the door, like a bouncer, and
Yes,
just
yes. You may not pass.
the spiritual bouncer. There's a Cyclops in there, bro. Like,
Yes,
now's not a good
yes.
time.
I know. Well, no, I asked her, like, and we would go to like a family member's house, and I'm just like, hey, do you see anything? And so sometimes she says no, like, can't see anything, and then sometimes it's like, oh yeah, they're like pointing out all these angels or whatnot that she sees. And it's just so cool that it would be amazing to have that kind of filter almost where you can see
Wow.
and know. And in the book, Blake talks a lot about, being in a worship service at church. There's so many things that are happening, like in the spirit realm when we're worshiping, like all water being poured out, things like that is often talked about. And he talks about every person having their own like personal like angel, protective angel, and things like that. And he'd talk about how some are, they look very different than each other, and a lot of times they kind of match the look of the person that they're with, not necessarily like to a T, but like
Right.
when he sees it, he's like, that's very familiar to that person. So they're unique.
Right.
And it's just kind of the way that I think God has his creativity. But the Bible talks about it, even in Psalm 91, like the angels would be there, making sure you don't stumble on a rock, like things like that. Like this is all throughout the Bible. And I was, just kind of dealing with that with my daughter. I'm reading these examples in scripture about this stuff that we don't really think about like in our typical walk as a believer. But in Colossians, he says, in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, like the spiritual realm, sometimes invisible. Matthew 18 talks about, see that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I'll tell you that there's angels in heaven. They always see the face of my Father in heaven. Like, they're angels. Like, there's personal angels. Psalm 91, like I mentioned, like there's all this. It's all in the Bible. It's all things that, you know, we might kind of skip over or not take as like literally. But I do feel like there's so much going on, Michelle. And like you and I, we trust that our microwave, you know, heats up our food.
That's right. We
and
sure
we
do.
trust that, like, yeah, my AirPods are connected to listen to you right now, but we can't see what's happening.
Right.
We believe it. Like,
Right.
of course, Bluetooth is real. Of course, Wi-Fi happens.
Right. So
but
why
the
would
spirit
angels or
realm-
demons? Yeah. Why would that be so far fetched? Right.
Right. And I think it's so much more normal than we even realize.
Gosh. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. Yeah.
Of course.
Now, you said that you don't personally have this ability or this gifting. None of your other children have expressed seeing anything in the house. Your wife hasn't expressed seeing anything.
No, you know, we've talked about like wanting, like, it's one of those things I have prayed for many times. I'm like, Lord, I would love to see that. And in Blake's book, he talks about how everyone can. And to me, it's a little bit of a mystery as to like when and how. But some people I've talked to, you know, some cool experiences. Like, we went up for prayer at church about the situation back when it was like a really big deal and we were getting zero sleep because she was continuing to see things. And the guy that just happened to be at the altar minister with us, he's like, you know, it's so cool that you came up here. It wasn't my week to serve, to be up here, but I saw you guys in line and I wanted to be part of this. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, I've had the ability to see in the spirit, and it started when he was like 14. Wow. He's, you know, probably 50 or 60 now. So I feel like it could be any time different for people and different experiences. But I feel like God's a good father, and he wants us to know more and more. And so I think for me, part of that is seeking that out and wanting that. The kids, some of them, like, I don't want to see it, you know, because it's when the Bible describes angels.
Yes.
I mean, it is not a beautiful little Cupid, you know, on a pillow with little
Nope.
fairy wings, you know.
Nope.
In fact, every time there's a visitation of an angel, first thing they say is, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a reason to be afraid because they're pretty frightening to look at, right?
Yeah,
So,
frightening, and you've never seen it before. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're loud, and sometimes they're bright, and sometimes,
yeah. Or,
Just
you know,
can't
like
explain
the
it.
host that when Jesus was born, the host, meaning a lot of them like that, had to be so shocking in a world where there's no light outside of the sun and fire, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the whole sky being lit up. And I just think like how much more, so for my daughter being so young, that's hard to like really process as far as like when you see something. I think it's probably scarier on the demonic side, obviously, but when you see that, how do you reconcile that? How do you, you know, deal with that without being afraid? But the older kids don't want to. But I also think, you know, the Bible, scripture talks about in the Bible about entertaining, you know, angels and things unaware, really. And in Hebrews 13:12 says to show hospitality to strangers, for they may be angels from God showing up as your guests. I think there are examples in my life and, you know, just throughout life where we probably interact with the spirit realm more than we think because we're spiritual beings, right?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that last scripture, they might show up as your guests.
Yeah.
And it could be the other way around as well. Because I know that there's a time that you might have had an encounter with spiritual beings that were there to kind of host you and protect you. It was a time in LA and in college. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so when I was in school in Los Angeles, that's really when I finally like disconnected from being raised a Christian and just kind of going through that habitually. Like, my parents did a really good job, but it was very much just what we did. It was their belief system, and I had to really take that as my own. And so part of that like awakening for me was like really taking my faith seriously. And so I remember every Monday night I would fast dinner, which is a big deal for someone in college because it's all about eating, right?
Absolutely.
And so I would fast dinner, go on a prayer walk, and I would back in the day would leave my Palm Pilot, my phone, leave everything behind and just go for a walk and pray. That was hard to do. And so I would do that, and I remember just kind of walking the streets of the city where my school was in. It wasn't in the hood. It was a relatively nice area, so it was not a bad place. But I do remember this one time, as I was walking, suddenly there was like this truck following me. It was like a pickup truck, and there were some shady looking dudes in there. And I thought, whatever, we're in LA, stuff happens. But they kept following me. Everywhere I would turn, they would just kind of slowly roll behind me, and I'd turn again. And so I started to get a little concerned and started to pick up the pace, and they were still going. So after about 5 minutes of this, I was like kind of in a full-on sprint, because there was like a little bridge to get back to the school where cars couldn't go. So I'm like trying to get there, but they were catching up with me because they're obviously a little faster than me on foot. And I remember there was nobody around. Like the neighborhood was pretty empty. It was like an evening time. People probably eating dinner or coming back from work. And so I finally, right before the bridge to go back to where I would feel safe back at school, I saw these like two ladies, probably in their 70s or 80s, just standing in a driveway with the garage door open. I was like, this is it. This is someone who could help me, because I didn't have my phone. And otherwise I would have, called 911 or done something earlier.
Yeah.
So I ran up to them, and I was just probably 20 years old. So I was really young, and I was like, can you please help me? Can you call 911? These guys were following me. And I remember turning around, and the truck stopped. They got out of the truck, and I feel like this is probably the end of my life. I need to pray for salvation one more time, just because, I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And I just remember when I looked back at the guys, they were looking at me and these two ladies who were very fragile, old looking ladies. And these guys just looked terrified. They were scared out of their lives. And
Like they're looking at them and they're expressing terror, not looking at you, but they're...
No, not me. They're looking at these ladies, which is right where I was, and they looked terrified. Like, I'm not a scary looking dude. These ladies definitely weren't scary looking to me, but these guys were so terrified of these, what they saw around these ladies, that they took off in their truck and sped off. And I remember kind of looking back and forth, like, I don't see anything terrifying about these ladies. Like, they look like nice ladies. But I didn't understand. But then I realized, like, as I was walking back after that, I was like, there's something more to this. Like, maybe I saw them in the natural, but maybe they were, like we talked about, like showing up as your guest or showing up to protect you. Maybe they were angels who looked like the real thing, the angels that are described in the Bible, all the eyes and wings and all the things like that, right? There was something that was terrifying to these guys. So that was what I thought. And then I would go on the same walking route every week after that. I don't know why I kept doing it, but I did it, and I never saw these ladies again. At that same house, I saw a family, younger family. And so it's like,
it didn't match.
It did not match up. And so the only reason that I didn't get, jumped that day, I think, was because the Lord sent these angels to protect me. And to me, they just looked like, normal people. And so that really opened my mind to realize, like, there could be so many people that we are interacting with. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of Christian movies that would portray, like, a homeless guy, and then someone gives him money, and then it turns out the homeless guy was an angel. Right. I think that's one caricature of it, and that could be something that happens. But I think it goes beyond that. I think there's so many people or things that happen in our lives that's way deeper than just the flesh.
Yeah, I agree. I've had an encounter like that too.
Really?
It was years ago. My mom went on a trip to Illinois, and she got sick and ended up in the hospital. I'm all the way in California, and I'm frantic. I've never had to face a family emergency from afar. So I go out there, check on her. We're trying to figure out a treatment plan for her, and she's just refusing a little bit. She's being a little stubborn, but it's very frustrating. I've left work. The sooner you do this, the sooner we can get you on a plane and we can get you back home, Ma, please. Yes. So I leave her there at the hospital, come all the way back to California. I'm at work one day, and on the top of my work building, various people can come up to the rooftop and eat their lunch. They can be either from different departments or just different companies altogether. Just a mishmash, pish-posh of people. So I'm sitting there, and I'm on the phone with my brother, And I'm just, I got the phone to my ear, and I'm, I feel like I was having a tense conversation because I'm trying to articulate to him, Francis, like, mom's not listening, and this is frustrating, and I just, need for her to start the treatment plan. I don't know why she's not listening to me. If the tables were turned, she would be asking us to do the same thing. Da, da, da. So as I'm kind of, venting, there's this dude who walks up. This guy walks up to me with this big sack of fortune cookies, a clear bag of fortune cookies. I swear he stole them.
Were you at a Chinese restaurant? I mean,
I
this is
wasn't.
your workplace,
I wasn't.
right?
It's the workplace rooftop. This is where people go to relax, take a break, and do lunch.
What?
Sack of them, a sack. And he's like, just happy-go-lucky and jolly. And he's got this sack, and he's like, hey, nudging me. I'm on the phone. I got the phone in my neck. I'm like, huh? Hey, would you like a fortune cookie? Go on, take a couple. It's okay. And I'm like, okay, and grab a couple of fortune cookies. And I'm on the phone. I still have my, my brother in my ear. And I'm like, yeah, and just going on and venting. And I crack open, a piece and eat a piece and then crack open another. And I pull out the fortune and 2 cookies I took. The first one got me really excited. The first one said that all of your efforts will be budding soon. And I'm like, okay. And then I crack open the other one. Soon, someone will take heed to your important words, something like that.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm sitting here complaining about my efforts to try and help my mom get back home and get healthy and get well. And the fact that she's not listening to me. These are very specific fortune cookies. I was probably cracking those open and nibbling and then reading each one for no more than maybe 60 seconds, just a minute. And it was enough to make me gasp and tell my brother to hold on the phone. And I popped my head up from this lounger chair I was sitting in on the rooftop. And I'm looking around for this. This man has a sack of fortune cookies. There's no way he got rid of them that easily. Where is he? I'm looking for the man. I can't find him on the rooftop anymore offering people fortune cookies.
Yeah.
Vanished.
It's so crazy.
And like you go by and walk by that house and do that same route, back at the rooftop, looking around, don't see the fortune cookie guy anymore. But it was a very specific message. It was enough for me to take those fortunes and stuff them into my wallet. And I kept them for quite a long time. Later that evening, I go home, tired, exhausted. I get a phone call.
Yeah.
It's the hospital.
What?
Oh, we just want to let you know that, your mother is, starting the treatment plan. And would you like to talk to her? I was like, yes,
Whoa.
I would love to talk to her.
Yes, I would.
And she gets on the phone. Hi, honey. They're saying I should be, wrapped up in about a week with everything. And I've decided to go ahead and get started. Do you think you'll be able to come back and pick me up? Yes, I will be there. And I was bewildered. And I knew.
Oh my gosh.
I already knew in that moment, like for me, I intuited that this is not your average person who walks around with a sack of fortune cookies.
Nobody
on
does
a rooftop
that. That's funny.
at lunch. So I had a similar encounter, and to this day I'm just gonna claim it that this was probably an angel for me. And I
listen,
I
you
say
have
the same for
you have the favor of the Lord. Because you got some cookies out of it too.
I know, and I was fed.
I just got my life saved. I didn't have any cookies. That's pretty awesome.
Don't be jealous of my testimony.
I love that.
Don't be jealous.
No, but I think that stuff happens all the time, and I think that we need to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit when we just, even like human to human, just to say the thing. Like I've had so many experiences where I feel like a nudge to say something to someone, whether I know them or not. Just say this thing, or just talk to them about this, or ask them about this, and it's like, oh, is that just me, or is that the Holy Spirit? It's like, I'm not smart enough to really think about these things, right? And then my mind goes to, well, maybe that's the enemy. And it's like, the enemy wouldn't want me to do anything encouraging or helpful to these people, right? And so to just make the call or say the thing that like you feel is on your spirit and on your heart. And I've been amazed at like the few times I've done that, just what that opens up, and the person's like, oh, I've been thinking about that, I've been wondering that. And I remember when I was in the midst of a huge career change, I had to make a decision by like 3:00 that day. So in my quiet time that morning, I was like, God, I've been praying about this for months. I really need an answer. Like if I am to make this big career jump, which is out of the corporate work I was doing into kind of my own business, will we be okay? Like, I know you'll take care of me, but like, will it be okay? I've been praying about this. And as I'm doing that, it's like 6:30 in the morning. I got a phone call for like from a potential customer. And it was like during that time, it was very early, very unusual. I had the customer call me and like start this whole negotiation for a really big project. And so I was like, this is just God's timing. Like when we seek, we will receive, right? When we really knock, and the door will be answered. And I feel like it's one of those things that's on the receiving end, but on the other end, when I feel that nudge to talk to somebody or to do something, so many times it can be the Holy Spirit, even like I said, on a human to human level, not just like in the supernatural realm. It's like God's using us to do that with people.
Yeah.
But I haven't given out cookies though, so that's that's pretty special.
Well, you need to step up your game, apparently.
I need to try that. I'll bring a whole sack of those fortune cookies.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Brandon, I'm really just blown away by our conversation. This is a very different conversation, and just getting into really those unseen things that a lot of us have a really hard time digesting, understanding. I think there are Christians out there who even struggle to accept the supernatural aspects of our walk with Christ, because frankly it's scary. There's a lot of unknowns there.
It is.
And we can't explain it. There's nothing tangible that we can hold on to. And we might sound crazy sharing these stories with people, but they're real to us.
Yeah.
And they have helped us walk through, this very human life and existence, and to cope, to get by. It's done nothing but enable us to keep going. So
I'll just say this, Michelle, agreeing with you. It's weird for some of us, but in the Bible, Peter was in prison. The angels helped break the shackles. The angel visited Mary before she had Jesus. Jacob fought with an angel, and the entire book of Revelation. Like, I think it's so much more normal. It's just not what we're used to in our culture. And so it's one of those things that, thank you to my daughter for experiencing this. I've realized, like, I want to see this more and to be part of this more. And I think it would be a huge benefit for any believer as part of our walk, is to see beyond just the natural, that's where the Lord is.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Now, before we go, do you mind me telling you a prayer that our previous guest had for you?
Oh, sure. That's awesome.
All right. So our previous guest had this to say to you. They pray that you find strength in the Lord to boldly declare what it is that God has destined for your life, along with the stories and messages you are meant to share. May it bring forth what is meant to come out of the lives that you touch. How does that resonate with you?
Wow.
I think that's really spot on. Stories and messages.
I mean, that's very prophetic for sure. I feel like my whole life message is really about story, and obviously the biggest story there is Jesus coming to save us, right? But beyond that, I just feel like that's the biggest outreach that we have, because Jesus did it, right? Jesus spoke in parables. Yeah. He was never teaching from a philosophical institution. It was like stories, right? And so I feel like stories has been something that I've been striving, my whole life, whether that's with my clients to tell the story of what their business does, or telling the story that will like dramatically change someone's life. And like you even alluded to in the brief bio intro, I saw that for the first time when I was very young, when I created a video it was the worst video ever created. I just watched it recently, my very first video. But it brought emotion to people, and it was the story. It's all about story. And I think whether that's a video or whether that's just something that's part of our lives, like that is a huge outreach. So that prayer, I would love to have that in writing too, because I will receive that and think through that, because I think that's very spot on. That was amazing.
Yeah, I'll be sure to share it with you.
Amazing.
And then, hopefully very soon you'll be able to see who sent you that message as well, and hear it from their mouth.
That's awesome.
So what about you? Do you have a prayer, a wish, or a hope for our next guest? I would like to pass it on.
That's so cool. Yeah, so let me think about that.
Take your time.
Okay, well, I would pray that the next guest would just have deep insight into relationships and how those encounters and relationships are more meaningful than what meets the eye, and that they would be able to have I don't like a supernatural empathy to understand and to I think bring healing to people in ways that they don't even think is possible.
I like that. Thank you.
So
That's good.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Well, here's to supernatural empathy and understanding moving forward.
Yes.
So, Brandon,
yes, I love
tell
that.
our viewers, how can they connect with you?
Well, I would love to connect with anyone on Instagram at Brandon D. Marx, Marx, and also BrandonDMarx.com has, my businesses, book that I just wrote, as well as my corporate company that I work with. So it all can be found there at BrandonDMarx.com or at BrandonDMarx.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was an amazing conversation, Brandon.
Loved it. Loved the conversation. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Does your soul feel ignited by what you heard today? Then show your support by clicking the subscribe button on the YouTube channel or follow our page. You'll receive alerts when new content is available and stay informed of any special contests or giveaways held by this podcast sponsor. Thanks for watching and listening.